Today on the Topping Show, Matt Walsh roasts modern therapy as well as female therapist. Trump's idea of a 50-year mortgage gets roasted. Subaru launches a special edition BRZ. And Honda, they recall the iconic Civic. All of that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of the Topping Show is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency IT security. Heck, say founder at least twice a day. Guy says quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or business owner, reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, still giving away a free Flamethrower with every IT purchase with Picatinny rail adapter, so you can mount it to any standard AR-15 like all awesome accessories can be. Go to toppingtechnologies.com and click the Flamethrower button to learn more and see me shooting a flamethrower. And lastly, trying to get 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you click that button and tell your friend and your enemies, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, going over to the business part of the podcast, you have Subaru launching a special BRZ, and you might have to win the lottery to get it. Now, sponsors thanks to Motor1.com, specifically one of the writers over there by Adrian Padiano. And, well, another first in a while, we don't have to give you a visual disclaimer because, well, this vehicle looks pretty darn cool. Now, they say, quote, Subaru launches BRZ Special Edition with STI upgrades. You literally have to win the lottery to buy one. Here you can see the iconic Subaru BRZ, which also the same as the Toyota 86, as it's a collaboration between the two companies with, some of those things where you look under the hood. Wait a minute, that's a Subaru piece? That's a Subaru? That's a Subaru? Yeah, Toyota basically just put some nice pieces of plastic on top of it, though they look quite attractive. Now, again, credit to Anthony over at Motor1.com. They say, quote, although it's been 5 years since the recent generation BRZ debuted, Subaru is still finding ways to keep up with the sports coupe and keep it fresh. As the most desirable special editions, the STI Sports Type RA record attempt is exclusive to Japan. It's not a full-fledged STI, but it does benefit from a wide range of mechanical upgrades over the standard car. Under the hood lies a familiar 2.4-liter naturally aspirated gas engine. Come on, when are you guys going to throw turbo on this thing? Ridiculous. They say the engine is there with a twist. Subaru has fitted a variation of tried and tested FA24 adapted from the BRZ CNF carbon neutral fuel race car used in the Super Takai series throughout 2022 and 2023 and up the round 2 of 2024 championship. The reason behind is detailed in Subaru's own words. They say, quote, weight and rotational balance tolerances for the pistons, connecting rods, crankshaft, flywheel, and clutch however, have been rigorously minimized, achieving a race car-like engine feel with low vibration and smooth acceleration. But the BRZ STI Sport Type RA's appeal extends beyond the race-derived engine. Subaru enhances the package with an 18-inch BBS wheels in matte bronze or gray, ZF dampeners on both axles, and Brembo brakes with gold calipers. Well, gold-plated or gold paint. It's actually gold. That'd be a very poor material for a brake caliper. Gold is very soft, so, obviously it will melt and deform. Would be good. Might know what they meant, but still. Grammar funny or grammar joke? Who knows? Now, they say, quote, barred from the race car, the rear differential case also gains cooling fins. A host of Subaru Technica International STI components further sharpen the coupe's dynamics. These include a front and rear under spoilers, an upgraded muffler, a sway bar, and a draw stiffener to reduce chassis flex. The most striking change is a massive carbon fiber rear wing, which, it does look pretty cool, especially in the close-up here. That was pretty sweet. Now, they also say with additional touches such as a special engine plaque, black door handles, and red stitching on the fabric seats complete the look. Special edition comes exclusively with a 6-speed manual transmission, as all sports cars should have by default. If you've never driven a vehicle with a stick shift or a third pedal, also known as a manual transmission, you're missing out. There's no better feeling than going to a corner on a track and downshifting, getting that perfect shift in. Personally, I smile ear to ear every time I drive my vehicle. I mean, manual transmission makes a Honda epic. Can't imagine driving a vehicle with 2 pedals and automatic. How soulless and boring is that? But nevertheless, they say, quote, it also has a shift assist function. It's essentially a combination of rev matching and downshift and upshifting without releasing the accelerator pedal. That's kind of weird. Cadillac has that same feature on the CT4 and CT5V Blackwing. Not a fan, I don't know. There's another picture of it from the front, which looks pretty darn cool there. Actually, pull it up. Get the pictures going there. It does look strikingly good in blue. If you're going to get a Subaru, their blue is pretty iconic. I like it. Yeah, yep, the bronze rims as well as the gold, well, not plated, that'd be too expensive. The gold colored Brembo brakes juxtaposition the blue perfectly. They do add a little piece of plastic on top of the engine cover, a little plaque for you. You can see up close to the rims. Nice bigger exhaust. Yeah. There's those fins on the differential they're talking about. Looks pretty cool. Now they say price starts at, well, it's always funny because the conversion, 4,972,000 yen, which is about $32,100 for the version without the rear wing, while adding the predominant aerodynamic elements bump the price up to 5.4 million yen or $35,400. Besides money, you'll also have to need luck to buy one. Production is capped at 300 units, and instead of a first come first serve sales approach, customers must win a lottery for chances to win one. Dealers are already accepting applications with entries open until November 30th. Meanwhile, Subaru will showcase the Honda BRZ this weekend at Fujitsu Raceway during the final round at a series, which is kind of funny. They're making this kind of putting an allure around this, having a lottery, an application. Oddly reminiscent of Ford when they tried to do that with the recent or the more updated Ford GT, which a V6 automatic, no thanks. Also $1 million, ridiculous. But it's smart from the company's perspective. You know, a lot more profit in these vehicles, and you add a couple more bells and whistles. It looks really cool, and I seriously contemplating getting a BRZ. However, reliability obviously won't be as good as the Honda on average. I know there's a recall today, but what's going to take, Subaru? Put a turbo on that from the factory. The STI, like the iconic WRX XTI, is always so much better than the base model because you got a turbo, and obviously you got awesome things like Brembo brakes, greater aerodynamics, spare suspension components. And when you see these on the track, one of the first upgrades owners seem to do is, you know, getting a turbo kit for it. The fact that the Subaru BRZ STI is still mostly visual and suspension, again, there's some performance parts there. But to me, if I'm spending almost $40,000, again, $30,000 I think is a pretty good deal for a sports car, a sporty car. But again, getting it at $40,000, these things are, they just need a little bit on for the STI edition. The base model, I understand, I want to keep that more cheap, entry level, get more of a mass volume units out there for consumers. But yeah, to me, it's still disappointing that, again, this is a special limited edition, only 300 units. The rear wing looks awesome. Great carbon fiber rear wing. So it's really cool. And with the extra pieces of stuff that they glue on there. Well, I'm sure they use nice 3M adhesive tape, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it is still, to me, disappointing. There's not more horsepower, more performance out of the top limited edition model. But I'm sure limited at 300 units, they'll probably still sell like hotcakes. But let me know your thoughts because, as always, be fast to hear what you have to say. Going over to the Cultural Part podcast, I have Matt Walsh reacting to the industry of therapy as well as female therapist. He is actually responding by someone by the name of Doomer who says, quote, "Therapy only works if you have lower IQ than the therapist." And Matt Walsh responded saying, quote, "The problem is that most therapists are liberal women in their 30s with no real insight or life experience. People say that more men should go into therapy, but no respecting man is going to bring his problems to a woman his own age or younger. If I ever went to therapy, which I probably wouldn't, it would be to a man who's at least 15 years older than me with some gravitas and wisdom." And Matt Walsh got 1.7 million views as well as 22,000 likes. I thought that could be the one extra like to get to 23,000. But yeah, he got about 22,000 likes and his 1.7 million views for his statement on therapy, which of all the industries in which I'm extremely skeptical of, therapy would be one of them. You've seen exponential increase in the options for therapy. It seems like every stupid podcast and YouTuber is sponsored by BetterHelp for like a couple of years. And it's one of those things where, again, we have a record number of options for therapy, record number of people are on it. And yet, look at rates of happiness, satisfaction in the United States, people being well adjusted. Those rates are going up, folks. They're going down. Which I can't but think, is that because therapy is making people worse? Or at the very best is doing nothing? Very famously, it was a psychiatrist forum a couple years ago, or conference. Someone actually stood out there with a microphone and asked them, all these therapists, hey, how many of your patients have you cured to the point where they don't need to see you anymore and they're well adjusted and they're happy? And like the most common comment was, oh, therapy never truly ends. It never, and they all laughed because they've never actually cured someone to the point where they don't need to continue paying for that service. So I'm very skeptical. And anecdotally, I've known like one or two people have had good results from therapy in terms of becoming better adjusted. I kind of joke, but I'm actually kind of serious when I say it's impossible to be depressed and do a bench press or be on the bench press. It's not going to cure all your problems in life if you're a man. However, doing the bench press, getting physical shape solves a lot of problems in life. I would argue many of them psychological. You can't cry when you're doing a bench press. It's just science. And you look at who has the highest rate of mental illness, who has the highest rate of people who are on pharmaceuticals, who has the highest rates of mental unhappiness. On average, is liberal white women with college degrees under 30, I believe is under 35 years old, so 18, 35. They're also getting a lot of therapy. And again, a lot of those therapists, I would argue, do make things worse. Again, there are some good therapists out there, I'm sure. I've known one or two people where that therapist did add to that person's life. They did help them improve. Interestingly enough, they're still seeing that therapist. Can't but think maybe a better alternative would be a priest, which, I mean, bang for your buck, they're free. Well, I guess, on Sundays you donate, usually put some money into the bin or, the collection basket, so it's not quite free. And again, not saying, religion's going to solve everything in life, but the United States has also seen a huge decrease in the number of people participating in church. I think that's one of the contributing factors why there are less happy people in the United States in 2025. Again, not a single variable analysis. It's not the only reason, but an overall lack of community. We've seen a lot of people mostly staying at home since the pandemic. Very few people go out in groups anymore. There's a lot less camaraderie at work, especially with remote work. And in terms of a man confiding in a woman, that might work sometimes. I think the vice versa. I think more if you're a female, you probably want your therapist to be a female as well. I would say on average. I don't think it's only the men. Now, in terms of wanting someone who's more mature than you in terms of the age, I think that's pretty common. You want someone who is more tenured, has more life experience to draw upon, and I think Matt actually has a good point with that. And again, age does not always come with wisdom. There are a lot of old people who are foolishly ignorant. A lot of young people are as well. It's not a guarantee the older you get, the smarter, wiser you'll become. If you read and constantly improve yourself, I think the odds are greatly that you will become better throughout time. But it's an instance where I become very skeptical about a lot of therapists, especially so many of them just push antidepressants like it's candy on so many people. And even doctors do this too. See more. Yeah, a lot of them are, I would argue, just commissioned salesmen these days, which allow them getting invited to these nice pharmaceutical conferences to get paid to be a thought leader, which just means they're reading from a pharmaceutical sales book at some dinner with a bunch of other doctors. Yeah, not all doctors are like this. Not all therapists are bad. Not all doctors are bad. But it's an instance where, is their life really getting better? One of my friends, I know a huge positive group in terms of, increasing your sense of community and your happiness is jiu-jitsu. I mean, that is one of the most diehard, you're in it to your brothers to the day you die type of environments. You can go to any dojo. Well, that's not how they call them. They usually call them gyms. But you have professors there, not like useless college professors. You actually have, professional, intelligent people at jiu-jitsu gyms. You go to any jiu-jitsu gym, if you're in it, or if you're just getting into it, they're going to welcome you with open arms. Now, obviously, guys are guys. You're going to give each other shit. You're going to talk a little smack, obviously. Make some jokes. In terms of a tight-knit community that, again, I've known a lot of people who have completely turned around their lives, going from depressed to satisfied to happy. I mean, organized sports and organized, places like jiu-jitsu, that's a great place to go. I would argue for the average guy, that's going to be 20 times more effective than therapy. Again, not every single guy, but in terms of where would you go to improve yourself? In jiu-jitsu, you're going to get in shape physically, which I would argue is a huge reason why most Americans are not happy these days and are having struggles. They're not in shape physically. Also, mentally, you got to be pretty sharp and articulate via jiu-jitsu. Obviously, I barely speak most times, so obviously I'm not good at it, but I've gone a couple times. But I think those would be infinitely more effective than therapy. Now, going to the comments, well, the first one comes to us thanks to Matt Van Swole, which says, quote, as I said many times before, 90% of therapists self-report as liberal. So what does it tell you about the advice they're going to give out? Gain 1,000 likes. Yep, that's a good point too. The conservative alternative says, quote, I've noticed that people go to therapy rarely go to church, and people who go to church rarely go to therapy. Probably just coincidence, getting 176 likes. I love American News. This is accurate. It's a gal with a bunch of degrees on the wall behind her with pink hair, and she says, quote, are you ready for me to diagnose your normal reactions to our degenerate society as mental illness so I can get you on addictive or get you addicted to mind-altering drugs with major side effects? The base chat guy says, no. Getting 1.5 thousand likes. Yep. Again, I'm not a doctor. I will say, though, it is interesting. You see all these pharmaceutical commercials, very unique in the United States. Most countries don't allow that. And yeah, there's usually a long couple paragraphs of side effects, which one of those ironic ones. Antidepressants, some have a side effect of suicidal thoughts. I mean, that is just ridiculous. Now, again, that's not going to happen every single time. We look at the myriad of side effects for antidepressants, especially. I mean, I would argue in many cases it makes it worse than you not taking them at all. And again, not a doctor, not medical advice, just give my 3 cents. Used to be 2 cents, but inflation, gotta be 3 cents. You also have somebody named of Sharon Joy as a guy on a couch talking to a gal or a therapist. He says, quote, look, going to strip clubs isn't healthy coping strategy. These women only seem interested in you and your problems because they know you're going to pay them. Gain 350 likes, which that's a yes, that's what you do with the therapist as well. And yeah. The organization Kid has a quote from Rudolph saying, quote, so the whole idea of therapy is you go to talk to a liberal until you agree with them, right? Gain 489 likes. Red Baron has a picture of a doctor pointing to a chalkboard, and it says, a patient cured is a customer lost, getting 232 likes. Sam says, the problem is therapy is gay. Go to the gym, getting 398 likes. Steadfast Fatherhood says, quote, men need mentors who've walked through the fire and come back stronger. I know a carpenter who did exactly that, getting 161 likes, and a good, well, obviously, based Bible quote, or metaphor. And again, mentors are invaluable, especially depending on what industry you are. They can have an extremely positive impact on your role or on your career. ADB says also therapy is a waste of time, and somebody by the name of Katie Hannon says, quote, as a therapist, I can say confidently that while therapy is helpful, what most people really need is money. Gave 131 likes. Red Baron also has a picture of a guy saying, no, I don't need it, to a brain. He says, no, thanks, I'm in therapy. Gained 51 likes. Let's see. Jake Lee says true. It's a picture of Wreck-It Ralph. It says, liberal white women when they see a perfect functioning society. Wreck-It Ralph says, I'm going to wreck it. Getting 69 likes. Let's see. Snap says, you shouldn't be allowed to be a therapist unless you've had children. Getting 85 likes. What? Melissa Chen says, I think this guy would make a great therapist. This guy, old looking guy with a beard, and it says, but the people are retarded. Getting 236 likes. Mako Smash says, the only decent psychiatrists are old men, but the whole profession got taken over by women who have mental illnesses themselves. In psychology, the inmates took over the asylum. Women patients sought power by becoming the therapist. It's an absolute mess, getting 457 likes. JT says the near total feminization of the clinical psychiatry and psychologist is an absolute crisis, getting 179 likes. Here's another contrarian statement. Zelton Slam says the problem is you work for Ben Shapiro, getting 131 likes. Lacey Rochelle says, dude, if you're really sexist, just say it. No need to do a whole speech convincing yourself it's something deeper, getting 117 likes. Which, I don't think it's sexist necessarily to say that men would prefer to have a male psychiatrist. Again, I think most women would want to talk to a gal as well. I would argue that's kind of the natural tendencies. She did get 31 responses, which she ratioed, though. Uncle Ted says, why would I explain my problems to someone who has no clue what it's like to be a man? Getting 24 likes. Also, some of those psychiatrists are saying, oh yeah, you need to start taking hormone therapy, which again has no long-term studies and has no impact in terms of statistics on people who take their lives. So I would argue that kind of shows it's not a good way to help people because it's not having a positive impact. But yeah, that's another thing that these psychiatrists are doing as well. Dissident West said, quote, no self-respecting man is going to see any therapist. Why would anyone pay hundreds of dollars to be indoctrinated by a Marxist is baffling to me. 188 likes. Someone by the name of Ian Malcolm, 84. Says, did most therapists get educated by Jewish-run academic institutions? Was Freud foundational to this? Was his distant Edward Bernays the father of propaganda? Is his descendant Mark Bernays the founder of Netflix? Isn't that odd? Which, yeah, he was, getting 108 likes. Oh, this is a good example of therapy being moronic. This is Courage is a Habit saying, here are some of the women running mental health today. And yeah, these women, especially stupid, they pay for this experience. And I use that in quotation marks. They literally go into the woods and scream. Spoiler, yeah, you're right to think it. They are mostly white, overweight, liberal women. Just do a push-up. Get the bench press. He's taking a piece of a twig and just slamming it against the ground. There's a very large gal doing the same thing. Perhaps the only exercise she's gotten in years, which might be the only silver lining to this type of quote-unquote retreat, is that they are now moving a little bit, and they might actually sweat and work. For the first time in a while, presumably.
Give it to them! What are they trying to take?
And they paid, I remember this went viral earlier this year, they paid thousands of dollars for that. Which again, I wouldn't recommend yelling in a public park. There's a lot of public forest, forest preserves. You can just pick up a twig and smack it against the ground for free. That did get 34 likes as well. Carson Crow says, quote, a conservative female therapist with a lot of life experience can absolutely help strong male clients earn their respect with the results. Just because we're unicorns doesn't mean we don't exist. Yeah, that's true. I'll give her a like for that. Mr. Lucky says, therapy only works if the therapist is like the great Jordan Peterson, whom most leftist women therapists have never heard of, getting 7 likes. Yeah, he's got some good ideals. The Venusian says, in your next movie idea, you are a therapist, comedy gold, getting 8 likes. That'd be a funny one. I'd watch that. Inquiring Mind says, therapy is largely a scam whose antithesis foundation focuses on indulging the ego instead of the controlling mental problems, getting 8 likes. Sweet Momster says, go to church instead, go to confession, serve others, do exercise. The fish cam is healing many also. He had 34 likes, which, yeah, apparently they have a cam on the Daily Wire where they just look at Matt Walsh's wooden fish in the background of his studio, which I would argue is just as efficient as the average therapist in the United States in 2025. But let me know your thoughts, because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Going over to the political part podcast, you have Trump with an idea of a 50-year mortgage going viral on social media and getting ratioed and lambasted and made fun of because that is a terrible idea. Now, this brought to us, it was one May post. This one's from Andrew Loken, who says, quote, President Trump's 50-year mortgage plan explained. And you have, here's 2021, which, again, many people bring into the comments. Obviously, in this case, the interest rates are different. Now, in this case, they're comparing a home in 2021 being priced at $500,000 with a 3% interest rate and a 30-year mortgage. That payment would be $2,108 per month. Total interest payments was $257,887. Now in 2025, that same $500,000 house has a 7% interest rate and $3,008, and it has a 50-year mortgage, $3,008 a month payment. Now total interest paid would be $1 million, well, $1,005,065. And yeah, again, they did change the interest rate. I did plug it into a calculator earlier today, and the interest would be, if there's both 7% interest rate, the difference would be about the $400,000 difference, just ballparking it. That's a big difference. That's, again, almost $500,000 in interest that you're paying. That's insane. Now, again, I don't know who told Trump this is a good idea. I don't know, someone just said, Trump, hey guys, we need to get the average mortgage cost down. The monthly payments are insane. They're crazy. Monthly payments are more expensive than an Audi R8, which is a great car with a stick shift. You can find one with a gauge shifter. It's quite elegant. But in all reality, we need to get back to the monthly payment being as low as possible. Just like an automobile, it'll make it 1 billion year long. Who cares? Who gives a shit? I mean, okay, Trump probably didn't say that precisely. But again, this is one of the biggest issues with people and budgeting, not realizing the total cost and the total cost of ownership. It's one of those things where, especially the vehicles, is out of control. And yeah, anytime you're looking at buying anything in life, always ask, what is the total cost? Don't think monthly cost, because they'll do this shit like this to you. They'll be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. Again, even with a 30-year mortgage at 3%, you're still paying over $250,000 in interest. That's, I think, asinine. But again, I understand most people can't afford to just buy a house cash. I mean, again, I'm renting a house right now. I can't afford to buy one. I hope to someday soon, maybe. But Trump's missing. He's focusing on the monthly payment because that is what people think of when they're budgeting. I understand why people would think I want a low monthly payment. And again, you do. But he's describing it as a solution. He's actually solving the problem. He's putting a Band-Aid on it. He's not solving the core issue. Now, the core issue is age-old, economics, supply and demand. There's a lot of demand. There's very little supply. I don't think it helps. Obviously, this is a political part of the podcast. It does not help when there's so much supply in terms of demand. We have 50 million people here on H-1B visas. It's a lot of apartments, that's a lot of house demand. You also have estimated 13 to 20 million illegals here as well. So if you want to combine those numbers, ballparking like 70 million people who are here, putting a stress on the demand for apartments, for rental houses, and houses in general. And again, the housing companies, they're building these houses as fast as they can. But it's not meeting the market demand. There's still a lot of demand for it. Then you have high interest rates, which is a fault of the Federal Reserve, which again, don't get me started on that. Interestingly enough, you remember the Titanic sunk? All the people on it, they were all protesting. They're all against the Federal Reserve. Then shortly after that sunk, it was created. But nevertheless, another topic for another time, perhaps. The interest rates, that's another thing that's hurting the market. Now, the issue is if you drop the interest rate down to 0% or 1%, whatever, you'll cause massive inflation, which we can't afford that either. The housing market is really stuck between a rock and a hard place. Now, again, houses, also, you look at historically, back in the house, your parents could buy, you probably bought their house for, a turnip and $15. I'm only partially exaggerating, but houses were cheaper back in the day. They're also smaller. So houses in the United States have got bigger, partially because there's a demand. A lot of people want more luxury. They want more stuff, more area of the house to store all their crap and stupid things like giant blockbuster signs. But in all seriousness, the actual square footage of a house has increased exponentially. I mean, I grew up in a Sears house, and there's actually at the time, that was big. By the time all the other houses were destroyed and built around it, it was now considered small by modern standards. It's where there's been a huge cultural shift for larger housing in the United States. And that's another reason why houses has increased in price. You also have, again, increased cost of good, increasing the cost of goods sold, increasing the cost of all materials. During the pandemic, we saw the cost of wood skyrocket. And that was one of the reasons, again, why housing increased in price. It's really a tough spot. American dream seems to be just being stolen from us from corrupt politicians. Well, I would argue on the left and the right. But again, a 50-year mortgage, that is basically the definition of the World Economic Forum. You own nothing and be happy. And again, if you just miss a couple of those payments, they'll repossess the house. And again, when you look at financing a house, which I've studied, it's kind of sad when you look at some of the numbers. I mean, for many years, you're not actually paying down the principal. You're paying off interest. Like the U.S. national debt, another reason that we're screwed. $38 trillion in debt because of the ineptitudes and or corruption of Democrats and Republicans. That's insane. And there's so much demand for all these houses, and yet the supply's not catching up, or it's getting there. But since who can afford $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month for a house, especially when your average American is buying a new vehicle? Those new vehicles, the new vehicle average cost in the United States is like, what is it, $51,000 now? They're financing those out to 72 months plus, destroying anyone's ability to make to create savings and generational wealth. You get a loan saver retirement. All those monthly payments just whittle away at your ability to make a living and really build something. Like student loans, that's another way a lot of people are screwed. I mean, some of those are almost, I know some people I make a lot of jokes, kind of bombastic. I always joke that there's no bitch greater than Fannie Mae. She's evil. Again, some of those loans are 7%. There's some people who will never be able to pay off the student loans because the compound growth is just it's outpacing their ability to grow their wages. They'll never be able to pay it off. Also doesn't help that a lot of them are getting bullshit degrees like underwater lesbian basket weaving. I'm only partially exaggerating, but gender studies is a real degree that people pay money for that you'll never pay off in 99.99999% of the cases. The only other case being becoming a useless professor. Not all professors are useless, but many of them are. And again, I don't know why Trump thought this was a good idea. Everyone's making fun of this on social media. They're roasting him. I'm pretty sure Dave Ramsey had a heart attack. He had to go to the doctor. Like 50-year mortgage. The average person will never pay it off. Now, if you want to pay off your house, not financial advice. However, if you look at some of the data with standard 15 or 30-year mortgage, I think 30 years is the most standard one. If you just pay off, and again, it's really hard. I know not everyone can, depending on your profession. It may or may not be more conceivable. If you are able to pay off just one extra month per year, that is a huge effect on, again, you're paying less interest throughout the loan. I mean, that's one of the, I know it's really hard to make ends meet in a lot of cases these days. It's just one of those things where you look at the finances. If it is possible, again, not financial advice, but you have extra money at the end of the year or sometime throughout the year, you just pay off one extra month per year. It has a huge positive impact on paying that house down. And again, I know not everyone can do that. There are certain industries and jobs where, again, sometimes like in sales, you have really good months, really bad months, and sometimes there's more good and bad some years, and you're able to do that. But the average person cannot afford to pay off to do that very thing, to pay off one extra month per year. Again, I know it's very easier said than done. The average person can't do that. Over 50 years. Again, even if, again, it went down a little bit per month in some cases, in this case, again, it went up because of the interest rate. Also have increased the cost of housing, too. It is really becoming less and less fathomable to own a house in the United States. It's sad. It's disgusting. And I could think of ways to make the situation better, but this is not the way to do it. This will trap people. Again, more often than not, I think the banks are just going to repossess the homes a lot. It won't be as bad as the 2008 financial crisis, which, yeah, crazy how no one actually was held accountable for that when the government told them, nevertheless. But it's an instance where this isn't going to help people long term. I think it's going to hurt people long term because they won't be able to pay it off. They'll be repossessed. And again, it's not solving the issue, which is, I would argue one of the issues is, look, the cost of the house is $500,000. Again, the cost of the housing has just gone up insane. Again, when I was a kid, back in my day, boomers, they got their houses for $20, $20 and was a wheel hoop they used to have in the outer barrels that you use a stick and you roll down the street. That's a very dated reference, I know. What might be a more apt one? A hula hoop? Probably, maybe. But it's an instance where I think the biggest issue is just the cost of the home. If the homes were, again, if that was a $250,000 house, which, again, that same house, again, depends where you are. Beverly Hills, California, it's going to be more expensive, of course, than, Des Moines, Iowa. As much as I kind of like Des Moines, Iowa. I'm a little biased. I grew up in the Midwest. Go Hawks. But it's an instance where one of the biggest issues is that cost of the house and that interest rate. Now, historically speaking, that actually is not terrible. There have been times in the United States where interest rate for houses like 14%. And after the 2008-2009 financial crisis, and years, when the Federal Reserve, again, they pumped out more money than they knew was, they just printed money. There's some people that had zero. There are people with 0 to 1 and 2% interest rates on their houses, which is why also they'll never leave or move or sell, because if they do, they'd have to pay 7% interest rate. And it's heartbreaking to look at the mortgage calculators and go, okay, this is the price of the house. What would my price per month be if I were to buy this house? Well, dreaming a couple years ago, and it's a 1% interest rate compared to 7%. It's, oh dear God, it's heartbreaking, folks. And it is just ridiculous. But again, if they drop that interest rate, go down to 0, 1%, all of a sudden, massive hyperinflation. Also, other countries are kind of dictating it because they buy our bonds. There's a lot of variables that are not working in our favor. And I really think Trump would never do it, I don't think. But again, deportations in terms of decreasing demand will have I don't think it's possible to move that many people in a short amount of time, just logistics, unless you use the entire military at a lot of support. And I don't think Trump wants bad press. He would never do it to that extent. But again, if you were to decrease the U.S. population by 50 to 70 million, that would dramatically decrease the demand. Now, again, economic effects, those people are also then not buying products and services from businesses. And again, those companies go to Costco, especially see a lot of folks there, not from the United States, historically speaking. Then those sales will go down, the stocks of those companies will go down. There would be a ripple effect. Some folks in economics, they might argue, they would argue that maybe it's worse than it would do more harm than good. But again, just extending the loan out, and we saw this, historically speaking, there also is concerning there's a lot of automotive loan defaults lately. Having those loans getting stretched out more and more is also, it's proven not to work long term. It's causing more harm than good because, again, you have massive rates of car repossessions. And I think this industry, the housing industry, is going to parallel the automotive industry as they stretch out. There are people with 100-month loans for a freaking car. A thing that, historically speaking, will go down in value, will depreciate like a rock, especially if it's a Mercedes. And it's going to cost, again, you're going to have more cost when it comes to the repair maintenance of the vehicle. So, yeah, I laughed out loud. I didn't think this news was real when Trump said, when the news said, Trump has an idea, 50-year mortgages. Now, one of the first comments comes to us thanks to Jeremy, who says, quote, the payment over 50 years wouldn't have been higher than, the payment over 50 years wouldn't be higher than a 30-year loan. You made a graphic for people who are stupid at math. Gained 1.2 thousand likes. Yeah, I just messed with the interest rate. It goes up. Going down more and more. Let's see. Jay Cantley says, reality check 50-year mortgages isn't as crazy as it sounds. most homeowners will never, well, he says most homeowners will never make it past year 10, 11, and 30 because they'll unfortunately expire of old age. He says key insight: roughly 85 to 90% of borrowers exit early by selling, refinancing, or prepaying, not defaulting. For the math-minded, 6% conditional payment (CPR) after month 30 works out. A single month mortgage of about 0.51%. Run that over 360 months, that's only about 15% loans survive at the end. Real world prepayment waves often drive the number down even lower, getting 239 likes. Ultra Mega Deplorable Deb says, quote, you compare a 3% interest rate on a 30-year fixed to a 7% interest rate on a 50-year. That's called misleading advertisement, and it would be illegal if you were a mortgage loan officer. You would get your license yanked and you'd be fined heavily. Well, again, yes, this is also a meme or meme. And again, he was juxtapositioning the two positions in history as well. Because again, a couple years ago, you did have really low interest rates. It was great. As Trump would probably say, back in the day, the interest rates were so goddamn good and attractive. They're so small, like my golf handicap. I always get the hole in one. Yeah, okay, that's the worst Trump impression you hear all year. I'll give you that. But nevertheless, the attempt was made. Tanya Hess also says, quote, I can't wait to hear what David Ramsey has to say about 50-year mortgages. David, please take deep breaths. Yeah, 193 likes. Yeah. Obey Gravitas says that's Binomics. And he has a little graph that shows the increased cost of cheese, alcohol, grocery, dairy, produce, and meat when Biden was in office, going up exponentially, getting 155 likes. Chester Z says, quote, sounds like renting from a bank, not owning, getting 251 likes. Let's see here. Trust cat. I don't know. Cats are usually crepuscular at best. I don't know if you should trust a cat. Nevertheless, this alleged cat says, quote, 30-year versus 50-year mortgage at 6% on a house that is $420,000. The 30-year loan would be $2,519 per month, or $906,000 total, paying $486,000 in interest. A 50-year mortgage would be $2,714 per month. Wow, 1.36 million and $935,000 in interest. You quote unquote save $244 per month. Again, it was $2,519 versus $2,274. But the bank ends up with $500,000 richer. They say banks don't sell homes, they sell time. Stretch it, getting 560 likes. Let's see here. Someone else also did adjustments saying, it would take 260 months. Yeah. These also assume 10% down payment. Someone else says, average person stays in the house 11.8 years. Trying to see if anyone's, mostly everyone's agreeing this is a terrible idea. Someone's just doing a lot of summaries from Grok. Doc says, what's a Pawn Stars parody, or Meme, can't speak today. Says, quote, Americans fix some money and make things affordable again. And Trump's the star from Pawn Stars says, quote, best I can do is 50 years of usury. Gain 43 likes. He's Rick from Pawn Stars. You also have Reap the Whirlwind. Says, quote, hey, Mr. Fluent in Finance, please us how the F longer torn mortgage 50 years would carry a higher interest rate, 30 years, 7%. All right, they don't. You're just retarded. Gain 15 likes. Yeah, pretty much everyone is highlighting how much more you pay in interest. But again, it would get that low monthly payment that people fixate over. But let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Now, going over to the business blunder of the day of Honda recalling their iconic Civic. Oh, but thankfully my baby's okay. Now, it's brought to us thanks to Celine Martin, who's a writer at USA Today. And she says, quote, Honda recalls over 400,000 vehicles, see impacted models. Let's see get the rim up here. Or at least the nice Honda logo. There we go. Which, come on, Honda, you're supposed to be reliable. You're bulletproof. Now, they say, quote, Honda's recalled over 400,000 vehicles because of an issue with 18-inch alloy wheels that could detach from the vehicle, thereby increasing the risk of a crash. Whoops. They say the car manufacturer issued the recall with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, noting 406,290 units were being recalled. Now they say what Honda vehicles were being impacted. Yeah, all the Civics basically. Well, Gen 10. They say, quote, Honda added that the wheels were installed on the following vehicles: 2016 Honda Civic, 2017 Honda Civic, 2018 Honda Civic, oh my baby, 2019 Honda Civic, 2020 Honda Civic, 2021 Honda Civic. Now they say, what's the issue? Honda said that the steel lug seat inserts were not pressed into the nut. Well, this is going to be really technical. Again, Honda said the steel lug seat inserts were not pressed into the nut seating surface of the aluminum wheels when they were made, When drivers are operating the vehicles, the wheel's seating surface may deform, causing the wheel nut to loosen and detach, leading to the wheel separating from the vehicle. That's very much in newspeak, or well, I was say government speak in terms of being duh. They say this could thereby increase the risk of a crash, Honda said. According to Honda, someone at the wheel supplier factory in Italy, that sounds fancy. It's not Italian. I can see the wheel right there. Thankfully, wasn't the one I got. Now they say, quote, according to Honda, someone at the wheel supplier's factory in Italy moved a fence used to separate finished products from unfinished products. Dang you Italians, what are you thinking? What were they doing? Drinking wine, and what are they doing in Italy? Eating baguettes? Well, I guess that's French. Yelling at each other and talking about Ferrari and Lamborghini? What else is Italy known for? That concludes your history of what you need to know about Italy. Also giving up on wars and switching sides. Nevertheless, they say, quote, some unfinished products were mistakenly placed in the finished product storage area and shipped. Meanwhile, meaning they did not undergo the steel press fitting and final inspection process. Honda first got wind of the issue in July 2024 when the Japan market reported the lug seat inserts were missing during a routine inspection of the customer's vehicle. Honda launched an investigation and found that among its U.S. inventory, all wheels had lug seat inserts. Honda continued to investigate and in late October recalled the vehicles. Honda added that the factory producing the wheels closed its manufacturing department in 2023. Now they say, what should you do if your Honda Civic has a wheel issue? Honda said it will contact owners of the vehicles may have the wheels so they could whose vehicles may have the wheels. They could take them to an authorized Honda dealer. The dealer will inspect all four-wheel and replace the front and rear hubs if needed. The company began notifying owners in October. Should be notified by December 8th at the latest. Now again, I look at it. Yeah, 18-inch Honda installed, but that's not the default one that everyone got. It's the upgraded one, I believe. Again, Honda, thankfully this didn't hurt my vehicle because I go to the track, so if I lose a tire, definitely not a good time. Again, you're known for one thing above all else, Honda. Darn near bulletproof reliability. And unfortunately, the darn Italians, well, they hurt your brand because they moved a fence and shipped products that were not actually finished and completed, and in this case, it's a major safety issue and error. But again, at the end of the day, you're in charge of the product, you're putting it onto the vehicle, supposed to be checking it out, having the utmost safety standards. So I gotta say, you, Honda, are certainly the business blunder of the day. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, try to get 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so click that button. I greatly appreciate it. Also, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or comment. It's a great way to give me some additional feedback. Let me know how to make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, anyone, everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.